They say perfection is finally possible. Not the kind that takes years to earn or decades to regret, but the kind that fits neatly inside 60 seconds. The world around me hums with that promise. Every street light, every ad, every face on the tram whispers the same thing. You can always go back. I live in a city that never learns, because it never has to. Mistakes don't exist here anymore. They've been debugged, patched, erased by a single click. The air smells of static and sterilized rain. Screens bloom on every wall, showing smiling faces and the same slogan that used to sound inspiring. Reverse. 1 minute is all it takes. I use it like everyone else. Late for work? Rewind a minute. Spill coffee on your shirt? Rewind a minute. Say the wrong thing to your boss? Rewind, smile, correct yourself. Each problem dissolves before it even gets the chance to sting. But lately I've started wondering, if the world no longer allows pain, how do we recognize joy when it happens? It's not time travel, not really. That's what the company says, anyway. They call it personal correction looping. One press, and the universe politely looks away while you fix your little mess. And it works. Traffic accidents down by 90%. Crime? Practically gone. Relationships? Perfectly civil, perfectly empty. Everyone smiles. No one remembers why. My name is Eli Harper. I'm 32 years old, and I haven't made a real mistake in 3. Sometimes I stare at my reflection and realize I don't even know what my natural reaction looks like anymore. Anger? Fear? Surprise? They've all been edited out, like bad footage. At night, I scroll through my reverse log before sleeping. A neat list of tiny corrections. Spilled coffee. Rude comment. Missed train. Wrong turn. Hundreds of small erasures stacked together. A timeline so perfect it feels dead. People say we're living in the safest age in history, but when everything smooths out, the silence starts to sound louder than the noise ever was. Sometimes I think about what it used to mean to be human, to fail, to hurt, to regret. And I wonder if those were the only things that ever made life feel real. Maybe perfection was never meant to last longer than a minute. Maybe that's all it ever takes. To forget who you were before the rewind. The city hums before sunrise, a low electrical breath that seeps through the thin walls of my apartment. I wake before the alarm because my body doesn't trust silence anymore. There's always some noise, the hiss of water pipes, the faint pulse of advertisements outside, a voice from a screen repeating the day's weather and optimism. I make coffee I can't taste. The beans are lab-grown, the same as everything else here. Perfectly balanced bitterness, scientifically repeatable comfort. I drink half the cup, spill a few drops, and without even thinking, I reach for the reverse on the counter. The drops disappear. The stain never happened. And yet, for one brief second, I miss the tiny imperfection that used to remind me I was awake. I stand by the window while the city resets itself for another perfect day. People move in soft, measured rhythms, like a computer simulation running at half speed. No one bumps into anyone, no one shouts. Every step looks choreographed by a machine that never forgets a beat. The tram arrives exactly when it should. The passengers line up with practiced precision. The same faces every morning, arranged like repeating tiles in an endless mosaic. I nod to the man with the briefcase, the woman who always hums to herself, the boy with the blinking headset who never looks up. We exist in parallel, perfectly predictable orbits, sharing space without ever colliding. When the tram slides past the river, I catch my reflection in the glass. I look awake, but not alive. My eyes move a second slower than my thoughts, like I'm slightly out of sync with the rest of the world. Maybe everyone is. Maybe that's the price of never being wrong. We've all been edited into ghosts. At work, the light is always too bright. The office smells like recycled air and caffeine substitutes. Rows of desks, endless screens, the quiet rhythm of mechanical typing. We don't talk much. There's no need. Every word is measured, polished, optimized to avoid mistakes. It's strange how polite people can sound when they've forgotten how to mean anything. My boss, Mr. Callahan, passes by and smiles that perfect, hollow smile. He says, "Good morning, Eli." I answer the same way I always do. "Morning, sir." We've repeated this line so many times, I'm not sure if we're greeting each other or replaying a script written by someone else. By noon, the day has already blurred into itself. A dozen small rewinds. A typo corrected, a coffee spill reversed, an awkward silence neatly erased. Every time I fix something, the air around me feels a little thinner, as if reality needs a second to close the wound I've just opened. During lunch, I sit alone by the window. Outside, the rain starts again, soft and unhurried. I watch droplets slide down the glass and merge into one perfect line. It reminds me of the city, how every mistake eventually merges into one clean story. No friction, no contrast, no life. Sometimes I try not to use the reverse for a whole day, just to see what happens. But by evening, habit always wins. The moment I feel something slip out of control, my hand moves before my thoughts do. Reset. Relief. I tell myself it's fine, that I'm only following the world's rhythm. But deep down, I know I'm being carried by it, not living in it. When I get home, the apartment greets me with silence again. No messages, no calls, just the hum of the reverse docked on its charger, its tiny light pulsing like a heartbeat. I pour another coffee I don't need, sit by the window, and watch the same streets replay the same lives. Somewhere below, a couple laughs. A dog barks. For a moment, it feels like something real, like a sound that wasn't rehearsed or rewound. I close my eyes and try to hold on to it. But the laughter fades, and the world resets itself once more. And so does the man who lives in it. The rain began earlier than forecast, a soft, nervous drizzle that turned the sidewalks into shifting mirrors. I stayed late at the office, pretending to finish work, mostly just watching the screensaver drift across my monitor. Outside, the city glowed in damp silver. Every reflection looked cleaner than the thing it reflected. When I finally left, the streets were almost empty, just the hum of traffic and the whisper of tires on wet pavement. The lights of the crosswalk blinked a polite green. I stepped off the curb, head down, thinking about nothing in particular. That's when I saw her. A small girl in a yellow coat. No umbrella, no fear. She darted after something bright, a red balloon bobbing through the rain. For a heartbeat, she looked weightless, part of the storm itself. Then she ran straight into the street. Headlights flared. A car accelerated, a blur of white noise and motion. Time slowed. Not because I willed it, but because panic does that. It stretches a second until it fills your whole life. And then my hand moved. Instinct, not thought. I hit the reverse. The sound was small, almost shy. The world blinked. The rain rewound mid-fall, droplets lifting from the asphalt like silver dust. The car slid backward. The balloon reversed its drift. The girl stepped back onto the curb. And suddenly everything was quiet again. The signal light changed to red. The girl still clutched her balloon. I didn't think. I ran to her, grabbed her shoulder. She blinked up at me, confused but calm, as if nothing strange had happened. "Be careful," I said. She smiled, the kind of smile only children have. Pure forgiveness. "Thanks, mister." I nodded, though my hands were trembling. The reverse was warm against my palm, almost pulsing. It had never done that before. When I reached the other side of the street, I turned to look back. The girl was already gone. The balloon floated higher, vanishing into the fog of the city lights. For a moment I stood there in the rain, the world perfectly ordinary again. No horns, no screams, no proof of what had almost happened. Just my own reflection in a puddle, rippling with every drop that fell. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt displaced, like the world had stitched itself together slightly wrong. I walked home through alleys that felt unfamiliar, though I'd passed them 100 times. Street signs looked the same, yet the angles were off by degrees my mind couldn't name. Somewhere, a billboard flickered between two slogans, one I recognized, one I didn't. By the time I reached my building, the rain had stopped. But in my ears I could still hear it, the screech of tires that never touched the road, the echo of a crash that never happened. I wiped the water from my face and told myself I was imagining things. The reverse hummed faintly in my pocket, as if agreeing, or maybe warning. Inside the apartment, everything looked untouched. The same lights, the same air, the same life I'd had yesterday. But something invisible had shifted. The silence carried weight now, like the city was holding its breath, waiting for me to notice what I'd done. I didn't sleep that night. The apartment felt heavier somehow, like the air had thickened, like silence itself had learned to breathe. I lay in bed, eyes open, listening to the sounds of the city. The hum of electric trams, the whisper of rain gutters, the mechanical sigh of a world that never stopped repeating itself. Everything sounded the same. But beneath the familiar noise, something new pulsed. A faint rhythm that didn't belong. At first I thought it was in my head, the kind of echo that lingers after too much caffeine and too little rest. But when I turned off the lights, it grew louder. Not a sound exactly, more like pressure in the bones, the pulse of a memory trying to push its way back. In the darkness, I could almost hear it again. The screech of tires, the snap of the balloon string, the child's voice saying, "Thanks, mister." Moments that technically never happened, but still rang through the room like vibrations trapped in glass. I sat up. The reverse blinked faintly on the nightstand, its display showing the time, the soft curve of the battery icon. It looked perfectly normal. Too normal. I reached for it without thinking, then stopped. My fingers hovered just above the surface. The metal was still warm. How long had it been since the rewind? Hours? More? It shouldn't still hold heat. When morning came, I pretended everything was fine. I shaved, showered, made coffee. The mirror showed me the same reflection as always, but something about it felt off. A half-second delay between my thoughts and the face that tried to follow them. I went to work, like I always did. The city looked untouched, washed clean by the rain. No headlines, no reports. No little girl in a yellow coat. But when I walked past the corner where it happened, there was a faint dark streak on the pavement. Mud or oil, maybe both. I crouched down and touched it. Cold, damp, real. It shouldn't have been there. Not in this version of the world. I wiped my hand and kept walking. No one else seemed to notice. People moved through the crosswalks like clockwork, faces blank, eyes fixed on the future, as if the past, any past, had been neatly erased from their memories. That night, I tried to sleep again. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the girl's smile reappear for a fraction of a second. Bright. Impossible. Wrong. Like a flash caught between two frames of reality. And then came the dream. At least, I think it was a dream. I was standing on that same street, only this time the girl wasn't running. She was standing perfectly still, watching me. The balloon in her hand didn't move, even though the wind howled around us. She said something I couldn't hear. When I tried to step closer, the world folded backward, like a film reel being rewound too far. I woke up gasping, the sound of tires still echoing somewhere in my skull. On the nightstand, the reverse blinked once, as if acknowledging the dream. For the first time, I didn't want to touch it. For the first time, I wished I had let the world break the way it was supposed to.
The next morning, I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I tried to measure it. If the world had cracked, I would map the crack. If I'd imagined everything, data would prove it. That's what I told myself. I cleared the desk, set down a notebook, and wrote in neat block letters, Test Log Number 1. Beneath it, the rules. 1 rewind per hour. Observe, record, compare. Simple, logical, safe. At least, it looked that way in ink. I began small. I dropped a pen, pressed rewind. The pen fell again. Same arc, same sound. Success. Control. My heart slowed. Then I tried a different object, a coin. It landed heads, then tails, then heads again. I told myself it was chance, but the room didn't feel the same. The air shimmered, faintly, like heat rising from a road that isn't hot. I kept going, spilled coffee, rewound, spilled again. Every time I fixed something, a new detail changed. A book slightly out of place, a clock ticking too fast, then too slow. A photo frame tilting itself by degrees,
I wrote it all down. Test log number 3, clock plus 2 seconds. Test log number 5, reflection out of sync. Test log number 7, mug moved left 2 centimeters. After the 7th test, I stopped. Not because the data frightened me, but because I noticed my handwriting looked different. Sharper. Not quite mine. I checked the wall clock again. It was 10 a.m. Then 10 a.m. again. The second hand jerked forward, paused, then twitched backward, as if confused about its own direction. I laughed once, short, brittle. The sound hung in the air longer than it should have, like the room was thinking about whether to return it. By noon, the notebook was filled with numbers that meant nothing. The world felt elastic. When I looked out the window, the clouds seemed to loop across the same stretch of sky, each time slightly less detailed, as if reality were saving memory. I tried one last experiment. I stared at my reflection in the black screen of my monitor and whispered, "I'm not going to press it this time." The reflection smiled before I did. That's when I closed the notebook and turned everything off. Enough data. Enough proof. I told myself I would stop. But in the quiet that followed, I could hear the faintest hum from the drawer where the reverse rested. A sound too steady to be silence. Too patient to be harmless. For a few days, I didn't touch the reverse. I kept it in the drawer beneath a pile of old manuals, as if the weight of paper could keep time from noticing me. I told myself I'd stopped. But stopping is harder than starting. Once you've rewritten the world, every uncorrected moment feels wrong. It was evening when I broke the promise. I stared at the reverse for a long time before pressing the power button. The display blinked awake, innocent as ever. I scrolled through old entries, dates, times, small corrections that meant nothing now. Each one neat, tidy, contained, like a graveyard of seconds. Then I saw her name in my contacts list. Lena. The last call was months ago. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. I didn't plan to call her. It just happened. She answered on the third tone. Eli? I just wanted to hear your voice. We talked, or rather we avoided the real conversation, tiptoeing around it like glass. It was almost peaceful, until it wasn't. I said something small, stupid, I don't even remember what. Her silence after it was sharp enough to cut. The sentence never left my mouth. The silence dissolved. The call rewound 60 seconds. This time I said it differently. I understand, Lena. You were right. Her breathing changed. We talked for another minute, and for that minute it felt like the world forgave itself. She said goodbye. No anger, no ghosts, just quiet relief. I went to bed smiling for the first time in months. The phone rang the next morning. Same number, same voice. Eli, did we talk last night? I froze. Yeah, you don't remember? I do, she said slowly, but not one version. 2. She hesitated. In one, you said something cruel. In the other, you didn't, and both of them feel real. I dreamed about it all night, she whispered. I woke up crying, but I don't know which dream was the truth. Then she said, Eli, which version of me did you call? The line went dead. I sat there, phone in one hand, reverse in the other. The screen flickered once. Memory desync detected. I dropped it back into the drawer. The hum that followed wasn't from the device this time. It was inside my head. A vibration that said the past hadn't forgiven me at all.
I stopped pretending after that call. I stopped pretending I was in control. That reverse was just a tool. That time still belonged to me. For 2 nights, I didn't sleep. I listened to the silence, waiting for the hum of the device to fade. It never did. Sometimes it grew faint. Sometimes it pulsed, like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. At 3 a.m, I heard it click once. The same sound it makes when I press rewind. But the drawer was closed. I hadn't touched it. When dawn came, I finally opened it. The screen glowed faintly, as if it had been running all night. The log said, "Last correction, 4:12 a.m. I checked the clock. 4:12. I froze. I would have remembered that. Wouldn't I? The more I stared at the screen, the more the numbers seemed to flicker. A dozen timestamps appearing and vanishing too fast to read. It was rewriting its own history. I scrolled to the bottom of the log. Usage count, last 48 hours, 23. I'd counted 14 since the street, since I started the test log. Pages of notes, timestamps. But here they were. 9 extra entries I didn't remember making, each marked successful correction. Correction of what? I opened the first one. The display flashed white. For a heartbeat, I saw my own face reflected, eyes wider, jaw clenched, the expression of someone who already knew the ending. Then it vanished. The air in the room shifted. The clock on the wall ticked twice, then stopped. The reverse's display had changed again. A red warning blinked in the center. Memory desync detected. What does that mean? I whispered. The light on the device pulsed in reply. 1 long flash, 2 short ones. A rhythm. Almost intentional. I don't know why I said it, but the words came out before I could stop them. Are you recording me? The device flashed again. Short, short, long. Like Morse code for yes. I felt the hair on my arms rise. The silence pressed against me, heavy and patient. I turned it off, pulled the battery out, wrapped it in a towel, shoved it back into the drawer. But the hum never really stopped. When I opened my computer, the documents on my screen kept rearranging themselves. Sentences I hadn't written appeared and vanished. Numbers shifted in the corners of my vision. When I blinked, the reflection of the monitor showed 2 of me, one typing, one watching. That's when I realized the real glitch wasn't in the device. It was in me. The knock came just after sunrise. 3 short raps on the door, polite, uncertain. When I opened it, the hallway was empty. Only a small brown box sat on the floor, rain-speckled, unmarked. No courier, no receipt. I brought it inside, still half asleep, still telling myself it was nothing. Maybe a wrong delivery. Maybe I'd ordered something and forgotten. But my name was printed neatly across the top in black ink. Eli Harper. No address, no return label. Just my name. As if the sender already knew where I lived. I set it on the table and just looked at it. The apartment was still dim. Outside, the rain was whispering again,
tracing thin lines down the window. The whole scene felt rehearsed, like déjà vu I hadn't agreed to. Eventually I opened it, one careful cut through the tape. Inside was another reverse. Same matte casing, same rounded edges, same faint scuff mark near the corner. In fact, it looked exactly like mine. Too exactly. I pulled open the drawer where I've locked my own. It was still there, wrapped in the towel, battery removed, lifeless. 2 of them now, side by side. One asleep, one awake. The second device, the one from the box, glowed faintly, as if it had been powered on recently. A message scrolled across its screen. Last rewind. Pending confirmation. Below that, a small blinking cursor, waiting. I felt cold. Pending confirmation meant the loop hadn't closed. Someone had pressed rewind, but the device was still waiting for the new version of events to stabilize. Which meant whoever pressed it never came back. My stomach turned. I reached deeper into the box. There was a folded piece of paper tucked beneath the padding. I unfolded it with shaking hands. My own handwriting stared back at me, slanted, urgent, written with a pen I hadn't used in years. 4 words. Don't press rewind again. And beneath them smaller, it's not you who comes back. The paper smelled faintly of ozone, the way the air does after a lightning strike. I looked at both devices. One blinked steadily, the other remained dark. For a heartbeat, they seemed to pulse together, a perfect synchronization, like 2 hearts beating out of phase. Then every light in the apartment flickered. The clock on the wall froze at 7:16. The radio hissed for half a second and went silent. I could feel the air vibrate, a low, deep hum that seemed to come from both devices at once. The cursor on the active reverse shifted on its own. New text appeared. User confirmation detected. And then the same soft sound I'd heard 100 times before. But this time, my hands weren't even near it. The hum stopped. The lights steadied. The clock ticked once, as if nothing had happened. Except, in the reflection of the window, I could see myself still standing by the door, unmoving, watching.
For hours I just stood there, staring at the 2 devices on the table. The one from the drawer, cold, silent, obedient. The one from the box, breathing. I tried every rational explanation my mind could find. Some elaborate prank, a hardware error, maybe a feedback loop in the memory logs, but every theory collapsed against one simple truth. The handwriting on that note was mine, and the ink was still wet. I sat down and turned both devices so the screens faced each other. Their tiny indicator lights blinked in alternating rhythm, as if one was listening while the other spoke. At one point the reflections merged, 2 pulses aligning for a single second. It felt like holding my breath with the universe. When the air finally moved again, I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The glowing one buzzed softly. A new line appeared on its screen. Last rewind pending. Then, confirm? I laughed under my breath. It sounded like someone else's voice. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights shimmered through the wet glass like dying stars. I thought about all the moments I'd erased. The spilled coffee, the awkward words, the small embarrassments, the child in the street.
each one a stitch pulled from the fabric of something larger. Maybe every correction had left a hole behind. Maybe the world was nothing but holes now, thin patches of memory pretending to be whole. I picked up the reverse from the box. It was warm, almost hot. The other one remained dark, as if it already knew the outcome. "I'm not afraid of you," I said quietly. But I was shaking. I watched the seconds crawl across the clock. 7:15, 7:16, 7:16 again. Time had stopped negotiating. On the screen, the word confirm blinked faster, like it was running out of patience. I thought of Lena's voice. "Which version of me did you call?" I thought of the girl in the yellow coat, of the note, of every silence I'd ever mistaken for safety. And then I pressed the button. The world folded in on itself, clean, efficient, painless. The air rushed backward through my lungs, light shattered like glass being rewound. For a heartbeat, I saw the room twice, one version empty, one filled with me. And in that split second, both versions looked at each other. I wanted to scream, but the sound came out reversed, a gasp sucked back into my chest. Everything vibrated, the furniture, the walls, my thoughts. The clock hands spun until they blurred into a single silver circle. Then silence. Pure, absolute silence. When it ended, I was standing in the same spot. The table, the two devices, everything where it should be. Except the note. The note was gone. I looked down. On the screen, new text flickered. Call received. Below it, a number. Mine. My phone buzzed. Caller ID, Eli Harper. They say perfection is finally possible. 1 minute to erase a mistake. 1 minute to rewrite who you are. Maybe they were right. Maybe perfection was never about getting things right, just about refusing to live with what went wrong. I don't know how many times I've pressed the button now. The memories blend together, edges smoothing out until everything feels circular. I remember standing in this room. I remember answering a call. I remember hearing my own voice on the other end of the line. Maybe I never stopped talking to myself. Maybe the echo became the conversation. Outside, the rain falls again. Or maybe it's still the same rain, forever caught between falling and rewinding. The apartment looks the same as it always has, the clock ticking softly, the faint hum of the reverse on the table. Only one device now. The other one must have been absorbed. I stare at the small light pulsing on its surface. It's steady, gentle, patient, like something alive. There's a note beside it. The handwriting looks familiar, but I can't remember when I wrote it. It says, "Don't press rewind again." And underneath, smaller, "It's not you who comes back." I smile. Maybe I've read it before. Maybe I'm the one who left it here. Maybe I'll understand it next time. The hum deepens, warm, inviting. The light blinks twice, then once, then stops. For a moment, I think I can hear someone breathing behind me. The air shifts, and from somewhere just out of sight comes a familiar sound. Click. Thank you for listening until the end. If you could rewind just 1 minute, which one would it be? Share your answer in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. The next story is closer than you think.